So, as a content creator myself, I've been searching for the perfect creator camera. I need a camera that's small enough to travel with, but I need to make sure it still has high quality photos and videos. Now, I've narrowed it down to 3 cameras. I tested each of these cameras out for a while, saw all the pros, saw all the cons, to figure out which would be the perfect camera for me and other creators out there. And as a content creator, if you want to make sure you get the best pricing on all of your camera gear, make sure to check out the links in the description down below. So, as a content creator, you need a camera that's a jack of all trades. You need to have good photos and videos, but also be able to shoot in many different shooting environments. And you want to make sure it's an easy to use camera so you can just focus on shooting. And the Canon R50 is probably the perfect camera for me in that regard, and maybe for you. The Canon R50 has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is more than enough resolution for both photos and videos for posting online. One thing I love about the Canon R50 are the in-camera colors. Canon's actually known for having beautiful in-camera colors, and everything from the R50 is really well saturated with a hint of warmth, and especially when it comes to faces and skin tone, you can always feel confident when you're on camera. But chances are, if you're a serious creator, you're going to want to edit your photos. The Canon R50 shoots 14-bit RAW. This is going to allow you to heavily edit your photos to make sure you get the perfect YouTube thumbnail or just a badass photo on Instagram. It also shoots 12 and 15 frames per second. First of all, that's super fast for a casual camera like this, but on top of that, this is going to allow you to simply hold down the shutter button, shoot anything you want, get the entire clip in camera, and then go in and get the perfect frame for your photo. And because this camera is made for creators, it also includes some really cool smart modes that I've never really seen on a camera like this, but they're specifically made for photo shooters so you guys can focus on getting great photos and less on the technical hassle. With Creative Assist, you can actually tell the R50 exactly how much background blur you want, how much brightness you want, contrast, color tone. Pretty much you tell the camera what kind of photo you want, and the camera does all the work for you, making it a great fit for beginners and people who are new to shooting content. And the autofocus in the R50 is incredibly accurate. When tracking moving subjects, you can pretty much just point and shoot this camera. And on top of that, it also has touch focus using the back LCD screen, which is also touch enabled for menus and other things. Now, if you're a content creator that shoots videos, get ready to be blown away. The Canon R50 shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, but it's not regular 4K. It's actually downsampled from the full 6K 24 megapixel image area, so you effectively get the detail and clarity of a 6K image in your R50. And no creator camera would be complete without slow motion. The Canon R50 shoots full HD at 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second for 5 times slow motion. When shooting in standard video mode, you're going to get 8-bit color, but if you simply shoot in HDR mode, you'll actually get 10-bit color, but you'll also get a flat image, so you can easily adjust your colors, and with 10-bit color, you're going to get a ton of flexibility, so if you want, you can really use this camera to create something cinematic and beautiful. Now, design is really important when it comes to a creator camera, and the Canon R50 has a really simple button layout. Everything is exactly where you think it should be. It's a super easy camera to use, plus on top of that, the rear LCD screen is also touch enabled, so you can simply control this entire camera like a smartphone. The R50 also has this articulating screen for vlogging and recording yourself, and it actually has really solid internal audio, so if you wanted to vlog with the internal audio on this camera, you could, but it also has an input for an external microphone for more advanced audio. And one thing that I think photographers are absolutely going to love is the electronic viewfinder on the R50. It's high resolution with a fast frame rate. This is honestly the best electronic viewfinder I've ever seen on a camera like this. However, the one downside of the R50 is that it only uses the new RF lens mount, so you get a pretty limited set of lenses with this camera because it's a newer camera system. However, this lens system will expand over time, so it's still worth getting the R50, and if you wanted, you could use an RF to EF adapter and use the older Canon EF lenses, which are cheaper. Overall, the Canon R50 is a great, simple yet powerful solution for creators who want to make high-end YouTube or Instagram content, and of course TikTok. You're going to get both photos and videos at a really high quality in this camera, plus this camera is extremely easy to use. So, cameras that are made specifically for creators is basically becoming its own category now, and Sony is taking this very seriously by starting a brand new line of cameras made only for creators, and that is the Sony ZV line. And the best camera from this line, and my personal favorite, is the Sony ZV-E10. The Sony ZV-E10 is a great fit for creators, not only because it produces high quality photos and videos, but the design is specifically made with YouTubers, vloggers, content creators in mind. The camera itself is super small and it's almost the size of a compact camera, but the button layout is super minimal and very simple. It has one button to go between photo, video, and slow motion mode. There's no complicated mode dial. On top of that, it also has a 3-capsule microphone built right into the camera. It gives you super solid audio even without an external microphone, but it still has an input for an external microphone. I personally really like this capsule microphone. This way I can vlog with this camera, even record talking head videos like this, and still keep my camera small and nimble, and it makes it super easy for traveling. It does have a side articulating screen, which is pretty much to be expected. Although the side articulating screen does not have the same touch controls that the R50 does. You can use it for spot autofocus, but it doesn't have the same touch functionality where you can use this camera like a smartphone the way you can with the R50. Inside the ZV-E10, you'll find a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor that is very similar to the R50, but just because the resolution is the same, doesn't mean you're going to get similar results, because the way the ZV-E10 processes the images is very, very different. And in some ways, it's actually better. The Sony 24 megapixel sensor is actually a back illuminated sensor, making it really good for low light shooting, even at high ISOs. So this is a camera that's going to be much more versatile when it comes to challenging shooting environments. And on top of that, the sensor is made in a specific way that actually gives it really responsive autofocus features. So when it comes to this camera, you can simply point it at something and let the autofocus do all the work for you. And this works even for fast moving objects. In photo mode, it shoots 10 frames per second with 14-bit RAW. It's a little bit slower than the Canon R50, but most of us are probably not going to notice a difference. But one thing about the Sony 14-bit RAW is that the Sony RAW codec is a little bit more flexible than the Canon codec. So if you're someone that's really serious about heavily editing your images for Instagram or getting that perfect YouTube thumbnail, the Sony camera is going to give you a little bit more flexibility with your images. And the ZV-E10 also shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, and just like the R50, it's also super sampled from a 6K resolution, so you really get the clarity and detail of 6K in your 4K image. And it also shoots full HD at 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, pretty much making it on par with the Canon R50. But one thing that the ZV-E10 does do different is that it has a quick motion and slow motion mode, meaning you can actually shoot slow motion and the camera automatically slows it down for you in camera, or you can also shoot quick motion where the camera speeds up your video for you in camera. This is going to save you a bunch of time when it comes to editing your videos. Sadly, the ZV-E10 does not have 10-bit color. It's only 8-bit, where most new cameras on the market have 10-bit color for that extra flexibility with your colors. But the ZV-E10 makes up for this by having cinema and log profiles in the camera. So if you're someone who wants to create a cinematic look and really push your colors and really create something that looks like a movie, the ZV-E10 is actually going to be a better fit for you than the Canon R50, because while the Canon R50 does have 10-bit color, the ZV-E10 with the log profiles is simply going to make it easier to get to the desired look than the R50 would. But if you know how to properly color grade, you can pretty much make any camera look good. The ZV-E10 is a great camera for creators who want a simple and easy to use camera with streamlined controls, but they also want the ability to really push their photos and videos and really create a stylized and artistic look. And overall, because of the Sony RAW codec and the cinema profiles, you're going to have an easier time getting to that desired look. When I was researching cameras for this video, the one thing that I noticed is that most content creation cameras make a compromise somewhere. It might have cinema profiles, but maybe with 8-bit color. It might have 10-bit color, but no cinema profiles. It might have a high resolution sensor, but might crop into 4K. And the one camera that I really feel like is the perfect content creation camera that does not make any compromises whatsoever is the Canon R6 Mark II, and this is a camera that I personally own and I've had since February. And I've shot a ton of content with this camera, so I really feel like I know this camera inside and out. What makes the Canon R6 Mark II the perfect content creation camera really comes in 3 parts. First up, it has a 24 megapixel sensor, but it's a full frame sensor, which is about 1.6 times larger than the standard APS-C sensor that's in the ZV-E10 or the Canon R50. By having a larger sensor, you get two benefits. One, you'll get a larger field of view, but because it's a larger sensor, it has the ability to capture more light, thus giving you better photos and videos, because the more light you have, the better the quality will be. And by having a larger field of view, it's going to be much easier to crop your videos for vertical content, and this way you can shoot horizontal and vertical at the same time. But you might be asking, why not just simply use a wider lens? Well, there's a really important reason for that. When you use a wider lens, one, it usually doesn't look good on faces, and it kind of makes faces look oval and wide. But on top of that, wide lenses don't give you that blurry background effect, and the images don't look very cinematic. By having a larger sensor, you get a wider field of view. This way, you can get something like a 50mm on your camera that's going to give you the blurry background effect, give you a more cinematic image, and it's also going to make faces look much better. And with the R6 Mark II, you get a 24 megapixel sensor, so you get 24 megapixel resolution photos, but because it's a larger sensor, your photos are going to look dramatically better than a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor on the ZV-E10 or the Canon R50. And on top of that, the R6 shoots in 12 frames per second mechanical shutter mode, but 40 frames per second electronic shutter mode, which is actually faster than video. So you can literally hold down the shutter button, capture any kind of fast moving action, and you literally have a video but as a photo file, so you can go in and pick the exact frame you want. And just like the Canon R50, the autofocus is ultra reliable in both photo mode and video mode, and it has subject detect for people, animals, and vehicles. And combining an ultra fast frame rate of 40 frames per second with the ultra fast autofocusing system, it means you are never going to miss another photo. Also, fun fact, I actually use the Canon R6 to shoot 100% of my thumbnails on this channel. When it comes to video, the Canon R6 shoots 4K at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, without dropping bitrate or cropping into your sensor. And again, it also has full HD up to 180 frames per second, and all of the 4K footage is actually super sampled from 6K down to a 4K file, so you really get the clarity and detail of 6K in your 4K video. And on top of that, you can even attach the Canon R6 Mark II to an external recorder and actually get 16-bit RAW with this camera. So if you ever have a big project, you don't need to rent an expensive cinema camera. You can actually use your Canon R6 with an affordable recorder. One thing that I should mention is that the body on this camera is really chunky. This is not a very portable camera. Compared to the Canon R50, it is a much bigger camera, but personally, I like it because it has a nice deep grip. All the buttons on the back are more attuned to what a professional camera would have, so it really feels like a proper camera in my hands, but it's not a heavy camera, so I still feel like I can do a lot of handheld shooting and I can travel with this camera. And of course, as you would expect, the Canon R6 Mark II does have a side articulating screen for filming yourself, and it also has touch autofocus using the screen. And just like the Canon R50, it's pretty much an all-axis touchscreen, so you can really use this camera like a smartphone, just like the R50 if you wanted to. And one thing that I really like on this camera that other cameras don't have is that there's actually a button to switch between photo and video mode, so I can be shooting photos, switch over to video, and then just start shooting video, and the settings don't carry over, so I don't have to worry about being on the wrong settings for video or being on the wrong settings for photo. So if I had to recommend the ultimate creator camera, it would have to be the Canon R6 Mark II. This is exactly the content creation camera that every creator should think about getting. And as a creator, this is the camera that I chose. And if you're thinking of picking up the Canon R6 or any of the other cameras on this list, make sure to check out the links in the description down below for the best pricing on all your camera gear. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.